Welcome to the Franchise Secrets Podcast with your host, Eric Van Horn. And our guest again today is Lance Freeman. This is episode number 2 on the franchise development process. And we're going to wrap up the validation process. So a candidate is getting done with validation, talking to franchisees. They're feeling comfortable about their pro forma and they're thinking, what's next? So Lance, like when should a candidate be thinking about going to that next major step, which is in most cases a discovery day?
Well, in our process, we want the candidate to really have everything that they can possibly, have done before coming to discovery days. So from my standpoint, I want them to have really most of their validation done before coming to discovery day. But I always say validation is really where kind of the rubber meets the road. There is nothing more exciting when you're talking to franchisees in the system and you're talking with happy franchisees making money. And you're already excited about the brand and the opportunity. I think it's at that point that you start considering booking a discovery day, because ultimately, you can learn, I always say, about 75% of what you need to learn in a well-run educational process and validation. But ultimately, to really make an informed business decision, you've got to come out and meet these people. Seeing is believing. You've got to get inside the brand. You've got to really see the resources and dig deeper with people that you're really considering a partnership with. You're looking at a 20+ year type of franchise agreement in most scenarios, and it's a marriage, and so you want to make sure that these are people that you not only want to do business with, but you feel like you can work with, that you feel that they're capable, and you can look them in the whites of their eyes and ask them questions, and they give you good, solid answers that you feel good about, that they're not making up a story. Most discoveries, I know ours are geared on a kind of a day and a half, almost like a 2-day event. And I always say you can't fake it for 2 days. And so, I would really feel after discovery day, our candidates really know in their heart, head, and gut, I like to say, if this is the right match for them. So we don't want them to book discovery day until they're at a place where they feel like after discovery day, they're going to know. If they feel like they want to come out to discovery day and then they've got, more validation or more things to do after discovery day, it's too soon, in my opinion. I really feel that those things should be done before committing to come out to discovery. Discovery is what it is, in our system, is what it is entitled. It's discovery, but meaning no one's signing at discovery day. There's no one forcing a pen to a check, anything to that close to that. In fact, what we like to do is we get application before discovery day. And we pre-approve based on applications in our process, and then we present to the brand. We think there's a good potential for a fit with this candidate. Here's all that we've learned about them: resume, financials. Here's how the process went with them. Really putting them in the best light to get approved. But ultimately, it's going to be their job again to come out, show well, and then convince that franchisor that hey, they are everything that these guys said they are, and we want to approve them, give them and award them a franchisor license so that they can move forward with becoming a partner of the brand. So,
you said a franchisor can't fake it for a day and a half. How long can a franchisor fake it for? About 1 day?
I think for a few hours before something slips out.
So same can be said for a candidate, though. I mean, they can't fake it that long. And I know you got to just dive into a story or two of like the most obvious person that got kicked out. Geisler told us about one that he kicked out of Discovery Day, or I think he had you kick out of Discovery Day. I'm sure you have lots of stories like this, but like who gets kicked out of Discovery Day? Like they couldn't fake it for very long, and they're gone. Give me a juicy story.
Well, I always say when we invite someone to Discovery Day, they certainly it's not because if they get disqualified, it's not because they can't financially afford it, or it's not because they don't have a relevant resume or that sort of thing. It's really based on their conduct at Discovery Day, and I've seen everything from individuals hitting on team members, literally, to getting completely wasted and being disrespectful to absolutely combative. The last one that comes to mind was amazing to me. That there was a husband and wife couple at a distillery that we had, and our CEO of the company came up. I introduced them to them, and the spouse absolutely basically took my CEO on and was I've never seen someone so combative and so negative within like a 7-minute conversation. And he kind of excused himself, pulled me aside, and said, please send them home. So we don't, he didn't even want to have them attend the rest of the discovery day. So I had to send them home the following morning before the second day. So
there's a couple reasons for that. He doesn't want someone like that in the organization. And think about if you're a franchisee and they were your next door neighbors, would you want them next to you? And you wouldn't. So it's a two-way street. And once through the process, it's really hard to see that because you think you're getting sold. But once you're a franchisee, it's a two-way street. And like you said before, in the validation process, franchisees often like, hey, this person was not going to fit into our culture. And I'm sure you get those phone calls. So hopefully a lot of that's prevented before discovery, but you can't prevent everything before discovery day, right?
It is, yeah. It's interesting. Sometimes, I've had candidates where they seem to do well on the phone, but when they showed up in person, I don't know if it's nerves or I don't know if it's anxieties. They know a decision is coming, and they just maybe show them their true selves, or they just get very combative. And I always say, if the franchisor sees that it's going to be really, really difficult in a discovery day, then when money's on the line, we know it's going to be 10 times that difficult. So they'll usually say pass on those because they just don't want to deal with that type of combative nature. It's one thing to ask challenging questions, and I know team members that I've worked with and brand managers welcome that. In fact, they like candidates to come in with good, solid questions and want to learn, because it shows them they want to follow the process. That's what franchisors are looking for. They don't want someone that's going to be so completely entrepreneur that they want to reinvent the wheel at every corner, because they're not going to be a good franchisee. They're not going to execute well. So they don't shy away from challenging questions. They want questions. In fact, I've even had candidates that come in that were so quiet that just kind of were a bump on the log, didn't ask anything. They were questionable. I'd have the president or CEO say, I really just didn't get a read on this person at all. I don't know if they really want to do this. They didn't really ask any questions, didn't really engage. So that can sometimes, from an opposite standpoint, be a challenge if they're not showing that there's some interest there. One of the things I again, when I have to step into the consultancy, if it's organic, I try to coach people a little bit on, don't hold it close to the vest, because I think people think that there's something to negotiate here. This is not a car sale. I mean, we don't change a word in our franchise agreements, and that's another thing that, again, organics don't understand. This is like joining a homeowners association. We don't redline the franchise agreement now for them. So, they kind of hold that because they think that they don't want to show their cards, I think. But the franchisor loves to hear that they don't expect them to do a cheer or say, hey, I'm in. But, they'd love to hear that they really get the brand. They're excited about the opportunity. There's a lot of things that they put into this that they really like. They appreciate the transparency, all those things. And then I get those calls after discovery. It was like, oh, we love them. They were great. I could tell they were into it. Approved. They're going to be a rock star. So that's kind of some of what we're looking for. Engaged, not, again, being, unfake or anything, but, if you're excited about something, there's nothing wrong with sharing it, and there's nothing wrong with asking challenging questions. But, if you bat, one thing around 10 times, then it's apparent that, if there's something that comes up operationally that the franchisor is in 1,000 times and they know it works, but you're not going to follow it, then again, they're going to say goodbye.
Well, you had some good points there, especially around holding your cards close to your vest, because a lot of people that I work with, they think that's what they need to do, because if they let on that they're getting excited about it, well, then they've lost all leverage. There's no leverage here. This is, like you said, I think transparency is the key word. Just what you want from the franchisor, if they're not being open and transparent with you, and you know, you're going to be like, oh, I'm not really into that. That's how they're looking at you as a prospective franchisee. If you're like not showing them anything, not showing excitement, they're like, is this guy or girl really going to be a good franchisee? Because nothing gets them excited. They're really not into it. And in reality, they're just thinking, I hope I'm not getting sold. So now there are brands out there that you'll probably know beforehand that you're getting sold, because you'll know it early on in the process. Like, they really need your money. But the best brands don't need your money. We'll get to that one question of like, who's going to lose more, the candidate or the franchisor, if it has more to lose there. But let's go to the hard questions to ask. So there's an answer that the prospective franchisee wants. And there's a way to ask that inappropriately and appropriately to get the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And so hard questions are welcome. And they're really not that hard, because I'm sure the franchisor has been asked everything.
Sure.
Give us an example of some questions to ask the right way and the wrong way. And maybe it's around, sometimes it's around money. Sometimes it's around, you know, the experience of the franchisee or the franchisor. Sometimes it's around, you know, there's not many locations open, you know, and I know it's a newer franchise, you know, there, it could be a bunch of different things. But do you have anything in mind that's like a hard question that there's a dumb way and a smart way to ask?
Yeah, I think, well, you mentioned, let's talk around financial performance. If you are at a Discover Day and just asking, hey, how much money can I make? The franchisor is going to, you know, they're not going to be able to answer that, because again, that's the FTC oversees franchising and doesn't allow franchisors to just make off the cuff earnings claims that aren't, you know, in the item 19. But I think if you know, they can ask more strategic questions about, in terms of what is the benchmark or what is the goal for the number of members I should, you know, try to achieve at grand opening, or, you know, depending on the type of business model it is, but, you know, how many accounts should I try to secure by this time, or things of that nature, to better understand how they can kind of get the answers they want, but not ask questions that not, you know, that are, this can't be addressed. And if they keep pushing that, you know, to a point where like, well, why can't you tell me that? And you know, they're combative about it. And again, it's going to be, it'll create friction with the franchisor.
So much of this is about expectation, isn't it? I mean, if both parties have the right expectations, you can come to a conclusion. Both parties can come to a conclusion. If expectations are not in line, it gets combative, and it doesn't need to. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about some hot brands. And when I say hot brands, you get out there on the internet, everybody says they have the hottest and latest and greatest and whatever. And there's very few out there that are like that. For me, I kind of see one of those come along every year. I don't know if it's just me or if there's just really one hot brand that comes along every year, but it's, you know, I have the choice either to feel like I'm kind of salesy, because the way that I prepare my people are like, you might go to a Discovery Day and there might be 3 people there that want the same territory as you, because this brand is selling out fast. And literally it's only one franchise a year that I have to do this with, but I got frustrated because I didn't want to sound salesy to people, and yet I knew this was a possibility, so I wouldn't them accordingly. And it came back to bite me. They're like, Eric, if you would have just told me, I would have been ready, but you didn't tell me. So now I lost out on this. So now I hope other people aren't really going to listen to this, but I prepare people, whether they think I'm trying to push them or not. I just give them the straight information. And I'm like, this is a brand that's selling out quickly. Right or wrong, it is. You have to be prepared to make a decision very quickly, or you're going to lose out on possibly the best territory, the territory that's best for you. I mean, you see it more than I do with these brands. Like, how do you prepare for that? And how accurate is that with the hot or the best franchise? Am I off here, or is this accurate?
You're accurate, and you're talking to someone that's been and worked with franchisors that have grown fast. And so I always say, we're kind of damned if we do, damned if we don't, meaning like if we don't tell a candidate that there are others in the process, they may lose their top choices in terms of territory. Then when it happens, they're mad at us. But if we tell them, then they're kind of, like you said, sometimes feel like, well, they're being salesy and et cetera. So what I guess I try to do in my process is share with people, again, it comes back to that transparency, letting them know, here is kind of what can happen, and here's what I do know, at least at this time, in terms of activity, and then allow them to do what they will do with the information. Like some people, again, I'll tell them, listen, there will be, one or two other groups from your DMA at this discovery day. I just want you to have the information because I know that you're pretty excited about these specific territories and there's additional interest there. Some candidates will take that information and say, well, I appreciate you making me aware of that, but I don't want to accelerate my due diligence process, and because there's someone else there, and if it's there when I get there, great. Then, and I respect that candidate that does that. I'll have others, and this would be me, that I tell that, and they'll go, thank you, I appreciate you sharing that with me. I'm booking my ticket tomorrow because I'm going to go out there and get what's mine, and kind of put themselves at the front of the opportunity to try to secure it. It's kind of, I guess it depends on one's nature, but there's a reason why something is hot, and it's not usually because it sucks. It usually is because it's something that makes money and something that a lot of people want to get into. So again, that's what we try to do in our process. I always say, for the candidate that is wondering, hey, do they really have someone? If someone tells you they have those other people going to that discovery day, well, then you're going to know because you're going to be sitting next to them at the discovery day. So they can't make that stuff up. That hey, there are other groups there. You're going to meet them at discovery day. If the brand has awarded hundreds of units within a short period of time, the inventory is moving really quickly. If they say, hey, this thing's selling out and they've awarded 12 units, in the last 12 months, then probably don't have to worry about it as much, So there's evidence there, I think, that can validate, again, to the candidate that, wow, this thing is moving at an unusually hot, fast pace. I want to be involved in this. I want to take a shot at this and go, again, back to validation. They can talk with existing franchisees and say, hey, it sounds like this thing's moving really quickly. Is that your perception as well? And they're going to go, oh yeah, they're just every other day I'm seeing another franchisee join the system. So that way there's enough there to validate. It's not just you or me saying there are others that you potentially can lose territory to. The other thing I try to mention to people that what happens too is it's not sometimes just someone coming to a discovery day that could take their territory. I have this happen to me all the time. It's kind of frustrating because it happens to my client, but it can be an existing franchisee that's already operating that all of a sudden catches wind through validation or other ways that, hey, there's some interest in some neighboring territories. I better buy up some more territory now that I have the opportunity. And the franchisor is always going to take the existing franchisee buying more territory over someone that a maybe that's coming to discovery day that they haven't even met or don't know if they're going to be a good partner yet. 100% of the time. So I've had this happen a lot where an existing franchisee calls the franchisor saying, hey, I'm ready to sign up for 2 more licenses, and then they let me know and I've got to call my candidate and say, I hate telling you this, but someone just bought the territory. And so what we try to do in our system again is when someone's coming to discovery day, we want to get a proposal out to them if they're serious and again showing interest and not holding cards to too closely to the vest, so that we can at least get a hold of their territory so that they can come through discovery day and then make a decision on that. So that's kind of key in our process to make sure that I've heard this time and time again with other opportunities that sometimes candidates feel like they were looking at an opportunity, carpet got pulled out from underneath them. It's not really the case. It's just things can move, and so that's why again the transparency from both sides I think is so so important in the process.
Yeah. Oh, Lance, you had some good points in there. Just because someone says that, it's hot, it's selling out fast, that may or may not be true. If you're talking to me, it's true. If you're talking to somebody else or a brand, it may or may not be true. And you just gave some excellent points on how to actually validate that. I know we're running up against a time deadline. A few more questions if you've got the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So preparing for Discovery Day, there's things that should be done before that. One of those is funding. What would you like people to come into Discovery Day with funding prepared? What's the best way for them to think about that?
Yeah, from my perspective, and I've really dealt a lot in retail, so investments that are a little bit higher, and that usually will have folks that are looking to scale, that are looking to develop most leaders over time. And so they'll use a funding aspect to accelerate their growth so they can open faster and start getting a return faster. I always tell people it's kind of the what comes first, the chicken or the egg, but you can't really get a full loan approval until you become a franchisee, because they're going to require that you have signed a franchise agreement, that you paid a franchise fee, that you've signed a commercial lease, that you provide a business plan, financial projections, all those things before they can actually give you final approval. It's kind of like buying a home. When you buy a home, they're not going to give you a final loan approval until you go into you find a home you like and get into escrow and all those things. So what I like to see from a candidate is that they have gotten a pre-approval if they're looking for an SBA type of loan, which they can get through probably one of your preferred lenders very easily, typically within 48 hours, so it doesn't slow down the process. But then they kind of have that feather in their cap, knowing that, hey, no matter what, I've got a loan waiting there for me after I join the family, and they can help me. The franchisor can then help me with getting everything I need to kind of fulfill those contingencies, those things being, like I mentioned, the business plan, if I'm working on the financial projections, all those things. So if they're doing SBA, we like to see that. If they're engaging in a rollover to self-fund, that's another great opportunity. We like to see at least if they're working on an engagement there, so that they can, again, move that process forward, because some of these opportunities can take more time. But ultimately, we do like to see that they at least have an idea of how they want to fund this when they're en route to Discovery Day, not trying to figure that out after Discovery Day. They don't have to have an ultimate decision on that. They can still be working through exactly how they do it, even after transaction. But we like to at least have an idea of kind of how they're going to do it, especially someone that is, maybe they're a little bit more borderline financially in terms of being able to do this. We want to make sure that we set them up for success and that they're positioned well to do this in the event that they're approved and they want to move it forward.
They can do a lot of that, or all of what you just mentioned, without putting out any money either.
That's right.
It's not time to write a check. Yeah, it's free. You can do that. So get prepared. And from a franchisor's perspective, if you're not doing that, something that's free to see how you qualify, they're like, how serious are they? So just from your own benefit of knowing if you qualify or not, you should be doing this.
That's right.
The attorneys and franchise agreements. And I know, I've signed franchise agreements for franchisors that you work with. I would love to have redlined it and changed things. You didn't let me. They didn't let me. We all want to change things. So why didn't you let me change anything?
I'll give you my answer on that. It's I was sitting in an Empire Builders conference a few years ago with franchisees that own like you 50 plus units and different brands, and some really substantial franchisors. And one of the questions that came up on the panel with these guys was, what would scare you about signing a franchise agreement? And the response I thought was really interesting from one of them. Then they said, I would want to run from signing a franchise agreement if I knew that the franchisor was negotiating the agreement readily, and if the agreement was weak, because that would tell me that, first of all, they're going to have a weak system, they're going to be open to a lot of litigious activity, which could be burdensome for the franchisor, and they're not going to have a strong brand and be able to uphold brand standards. So I always say the mark of world-class great franchisors is they're going to have a uniform agreement. They're not going to make changes to it because there's just so many reasons why franchisors don't want to do that. It's kind of like, I always relate it to a homeowners association. You're not going to come in and say, hey, I'm going to redline this thing. They're going to say, hey, find a different community. We want, and the way to look at it is, as long as you're a good steward of the brand, you're a good partner, and you're not doing something really, really bad, that agreement's really not going to come into play. It comes into play for those outlying scenarios where you've got someone that isn't upholding the brand standards, and they are your neighbor, as you said. They've parked the beater on the grass and let the home go to hell, and now you can't sell your home because the value's decreased in it because you got a bad neighbor. So it's the same thing in franchising. We want to be able to, for those outlying scenarios, be able to keep those folks in line if we do get someone that's not, keeping the brand strong. That's really when it comes into play. But if you do negotiate it, then you have to make those changes for others. And franchisees talk. We've been talking about validation a lot. And they're like kids, if you give one kid something and someone else feels like they didn't get that same thing, then they're upset and creates a lot of dissension in the system. It's a nightmare if you give someone a ROFR, and then it's an administrative nightmare. So good franchisors just don't get into it. Or at least, again, unless they're starving for growth, which should be a sign.
So I've done it both ways, and I have had things changed in the franchise agreement, and it was good. It was like, stuff that I want to change. I won, but then I'm like, wait a second, did someone else win even bigger? And that they did. So I'm like, yeah, I won, but probably just got some gimmies, and somebody else probably won really big at my expense.
Yeah.
And whether it's true or not, I was thinking that. So at some point, the rubber meets the road. You've got your loan ready. You've been to Discovery Day. Everybody loves each other. And like the candidate is like, I want to do this. And everybody experiences fear at that point. And they call it like a million different things. But, it's, like you're signing a big agreement. You're getting ready to start a business. And for a lot of people, it's their first one. So what happens when the rubber meets the road and there's nerves and fear and all of that stuff? You got people telling you, what are you thinking? Mostly coworkers. Like, what are you thinking? Corporate America is awesome. We're working 80 hours a week and we're making, not nearly what we should be per hour. And why would you want to risk something to go have an awesome life somewhere, And so they're listening to, and they see people like, gosh, these franchisees that I talk to, none of them are smarter than me. I'm way smarter than them, yet they're doing way better than I am. And they're able to go to their kids' games and do all the things why people want to get into franchising. So they're at the finish line. What do they do? What do you do?
Yeah, it is. I always kind of coach people that I've signed many franchise agreements myself as well, and kind of understand the shoes that they're walking into, and it's very stressful, And you should have what I call, if you played sports, pre-game jitters, those butterflies, and it's 100% normal. In fact, if you don't have those, I always say, you're not normal, and then we get more worried because we feel like they're not taking things seriously or understanding the gravity of what they're really contemplating. But it's really typical, and sometimes the subconscious mind starts playing tricks on you because, again, it's something different, especially for a lot of our executives that this is their first time getting into franchising, and they feel like that they don't have control, but they actually have more control than they ever have, but I always tell people after Discovery Day, there's really no more information that the franchisor could share with you. Again, as we talked earlier on another episode, you should have really accomplished everything in validation and learned, if it's a well-structured educational process, you've really learned everything you can learn to make an informed decision at that point. There's always going to be more questions, but at that point, you should be able to say, yes, this is for me. I want to do this. And so we look at it, again, talking about that mutual evaluation process, and franchisors that I've worked with, they in fact, I have one in particular that if the franchisee the candidate has not moved forward within a 2-week period after the Discovery Day, they will instruct me to close the file, move on, no matter what. And I mean, and the reason why is they view that candidate as, if they can't make a decision, get things done within that period of time, that they're going to be a really weak operator. Even if they came back a month or 2 months from now and said, okay, now I'm ready, let's go, they would say no, no thank you, let's part ways as friends, because they feel that they're going to do exactly the same thing. The way they conducted their investigation, the way they make decisions in that process is exactly the same how they'll make decisions in operating their business. So when it comes to signing a lease, if it's a retail opportunity, or where it comes to hiring a manager, whatever it is, they're going to have the same decision-making process when they do those things, And I hear this from candidates all the time. Well, once I decide to do this, then it'll be different. I'm going to be all in. But really, they'll use the same decision-making kind of process with everything else that they do. Franchisor knows that, and typically those are your weakest operators. When I say weakest, meaning they are the lowest performing franchisees, and they don't want low performers. So they'll tell me to move on from them. That's always kind of a surprise for candidates when I tell them, hey, and again, it's about expectations as we've talked about, so there's no surprises. People understand this is what the franchisor is looking for. There's no hard close here. If this is not right for you, if you feel like it's not the right fit, then we part ways as friends, and we wish you the best of luck with whatever else you're doing. But people should know at that point, really, in their heart, head, and gut, hey, I'm in. This is what I want to do. If you don't know that at that point, then I personally don't really believe anything, 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months from now makes it a yes, I want to do this. And it should be a yes. If you're going to buy a business, I really feel like it's one of the bigger decisions people make in life. And it should be yes. If it is, it doesn't mean you have to sign right now. You might have a few things left on that punch list. We might have to finalize the territory. You might have to engage that legal review and do those things to kind of wrap things up. The legal review, as we were talking, is not for, so that we can redline again, but sometimes we will have candidates that want to, have it explained to them and make sure that they understand everything that they're, signing. And we welcome that. We think that's great. If someone's going to spend, a couple $1,000s on a legal review because they want to do it right, make sure that, for the intention of just understanding everything, we think that's great, And again, it's expectations. We let them know if they come back with an addendum, there's not going to be anything that we could do. But if there are questions, clarifications, understanding, just kind of the spirit of the agreement versus the letter of the agreement, happy to spend hours, trying to help them get as comfortable with it as possible. But again, a legal review, if someone says, hey, I'm doing a legal review, it's going to be about a month. Well, no, it just doesn't line up, because it should be 3 to 5 days, really, honestly, unless the franchise attorney is on vacation. And if they are, then, you find a different one. And so things of that nature, there's really
a really good point. It should be a franchise attorney. Don't get a divorce lawyer or real estate attorney or family practice. I mean, it should be a franchise attorney, because this is very specific.
That's right. Yeah, I find sometimes people will have kind of their family attorney review it, and then they don't really understand franchising, so they basically have questions about material items that are probably in every single one of the 3,100 franchise agreements out there today, but they just don't know franchising. So they rack their bill up, asking all these questions that are really, a good franchise attorney will say, hey, this is all typical. Here's why these things are in there, why the franchisor wants those in there. They can say, hey, this is a little bit, out of the norm of what I typically see here. Let's ask them why it's worded that way, or why this seems a little bit harsher than what I've seen in other agreements. Let's find out why that's that way, so the franchisor can explain those things. But in general, if it's a well-written agreement, there shouldn't be a lot there that is a mystery to the franchise attorney. But you're right, we get that a lot. Sometimes we get that, I have a friend that's going to review it, and the friend's not getting paid, so the friend takes weeks and months to get it done, and it just doesn't work. So, there's really, at this point, there shouldn't be anything left on the punch list that should take more than a week to 10 days to wrap up, because as we've been talking, we already know at least an idea of how we're going to fund the business. We should already have gotten either into the territory, or we're finalizing it after Discovery Day. And if we're doing a legal review, then again, it should be days, not weeks. So
you mentioned something earlier on in this line of questioning. If you can't sign the agreement, if you're not ready to do it, that really is your decision-making process. And if you're not a really good action taker, decision maker, you will probably struggle in the lease and different in hires and firing people when they need to be fired. It's a very, very big deal that I don't think most people really take credit for or give themselves credit for, like how big of a deal that is. But as an entrepreneur, I think one of, my superpowers is I make decisions. When things happen, I make decisions, whether they're easy decisions or hard decisions. You have to take action. And it's the action takers that I think really excel. So I can see how a franchisor would say that if they can't make a decision on this, this is going to be a struggle, as this is the first of many decisions that they're going to have to make.
Yeah, the action takers make a decision, they go, and they don't look back. And even sometimes maybe it wasn't the best decision, but it'll still turn out all right because they can go and they can make it happen. And that's kind of what you're looking for for a performer, rather than someone that just can't make a decision and they're paralyzed, and they're going to do that with everything in the business, and they get left behind.
And they don't think they will, but trust me, they will. And the franchisors have seen it over and over. So the franchisors, they're just using simple math to do that. You're, as someone thinking, no, I'll make super fast decisions after this. That's made on emotion. So franchisors are using math. Prospective franchisees are using their emotion with that. So final question, Lance, who has more to lose? The new franchisee or the franchisor? This will probably not be settled today, but I want to get your perspective on that.
It's funny that you asked that. I had somebody ask me this the other day, or what they said to me. They said, Lance, you have nothing to lose here. If the franchisor has nothing to lose if I fail, but I have everything to lose. And it's hard for me to stop. I kind of blurted out laughing. I felt kind of bad at it because, I said, look, all due respect, I realized, you would lose the investment that you'd make in this. However, the franchisor has so much more to lose than a franchisee does. If a store closes on their watch, that is the worst blemish that a franchisor could ever have, because it shows failure in the system. So the franchisor wants to do everything in its power, the ones that I've worked with, to prevent that from ever happening. Whether, obviously, if it's not working for a franchisee, it's, the first kind of exit is to help them to sell the business and exit gracefully and actually realize the return on the investment that they made and move on to something else. If that's not working, then the franchisors sometimes, if they have resources like the ones I've worked with, they'll buy it back themselves, and then we'll resell it and make money on it so that they can exit gracefully. But there's really no scenario whatsoever, period, that we would ever let a store close. If we let that happen, then we have to disclose that information in that wonderful FDD in the item 20, and then every candidate, not just in that state, but across the country, around the world, will look at that FDD and go, oh, looks like they had a unit close here. I'm going to call this guy and find out what happened. And what is he going to say? He's going to say, run for the hills. And then they're pretty much dead, from there forward. So it's just the worst thing that can happen to a brand in so many ways. And so that's why I made the statement. I said, well, they have so much more to lose if you fail than just, than one unit, you failing. But, that's not to sound disrespectful to the gentleman if he's losing his investment in any way, but as a brand and a franchise store, the impacts are really rippling.
Which is good to know, because like you said, this is not to diminish like me if I lose money on a brand. There's nothing good about that, and it's never happened. Right. But that would be not good at all, and it would hurt. But you're getting another perspective that a lot of people haven't thought about before, and it's a true perspective, and it's really good for a person getting into a franchise to see that, because the goals are aligned to stay open, to do well, and to be a happy, successful franchisee, because that's what helps great franchise systems become even greater. So any parting words of wisdom for anybody, Lance? I know, I don't know if you have any, so.
I'm a huge advocate for, this is not a pitch for you, but I'm a huge advocate for working with a consultant if you are a candidate versus trying to do this on your own. It's funny in talking with you today about our process. I'm kind of realizing how much a candidate going into this on their own is pretty blind to whether or not the concept is right for them, whether or not they'll be happy in it in the end, even if they bought it. How to really conduct a good investigation. Not all franchisors like ours encourage people to get into validation. Believe it or not, some franchisors don't even let the candidate get into validation until after survey, which blows me away. I would never come to a survey without talking to a number of franchisees. And so I think that it's really tough doing this on your own. So that's my parting words.
Well, I mean, I wish I would have set you up for that, but it's true. Lance, this was awesome. I think a ton of people are going to, I learned some things today, from some of this, and I'm going to help people that I work with, be better prepared as they go into the process with your team and other teams. So thanks, man. I appreciate the friendship and appreciate you coming on and educating the audience.
Likewise. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.